is a philosophy that just connects you to where you're at and your own capacity just to stay in harmony with your own, with your body and regulate yourself, so you stay out of the practitioner's office.
Hi there, welcome to Finding Space with Alex Tyson, the show that celebrates the everyday legends who put in the hard work to become who they want to be and live the life they want to live. For people who understand that when we practice compassion and find wisdom within ourselves, we find success and happiness. Join me in hearing amazing stories from everyday individuals who have found incredible personal and professional growth through varied and, at times, wild methods of self-improvement and self-responsibility, and through their unique perspectives and work, have gone on to better the lives of those around them. From nurturing health to growing your wealth, or enjoying the present to crafting your future, no aspect of life is off topic. Mason Taylor, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, mate. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be invited.
Mate, when did this whole medicinal mushroom thing and mushroom powders and things, when did this all kick off? Because I feel like it's become mainstream in the last few years, but how do we get here? How did it become so popular and in vogue?
I think now maybe there hasn't been, but, now that people are having this, maybe for the first time hearing this conversation about medicinal mushrooms, that mycological conversation that is everywhere and has been for the last few years, it'll start popping up. Your phone's probably listening to the fact we're talking about mushrooms right now and start throwing up little mushroom mycology things on your explore page, and you'll get to see these little videos and you'll be like, oh my God, they're so cool. But, it goes back into the lore of how, mushrooms, being such a bedrock of this planet. Quite often everyone just thinks like plants are nature, but you look at like the only reason that plants can exist in such abundance, have such a core part to do with this planet, is because of mushrooms. Like that's where it started. Who knows where it actually started in terms of where they came from and whether they're, one of the major contributors to life being possible. They definitely are now one of the major contributors to life being possible on this planet. And so naturally, them being such a core part of the planet in terms of providing life and composting particular things in the environment, we have evolved along with various types of mushrooms, parasitic mushrooms, various kinds of composters, things trying to compost us, and then other kinds of mushrooms that have happened to have, maybe randomly, maybe in complete harmony and synchronicity with the evolution of our immunological receptor sites, are perfect for turning on the lights of different parts of our immune system. And that's in the Western sense, in terms of where this has come from. I mean, the guy who from the Western perspective, started really inspiring me, Hobbes, around the magic of all these mushies and how they work through the systems, immunological systems especially, but then those immunological systems that then lead to like such incredible benefits in regulating endocrine system and nervous system, not just immune system, and not just stimulating, and and bridging over to the law. Christopher Hobbes, his book Medicinal Mushrooms was released the year I was born, in 1986. And then before that, there's a real like fringe tripper mycology, kind of world, and especially it always comes back to it emerging from the awareness. It's the same with this, psychology emerging from someone becoming aware of the depth of Taoist text on psychology and reinterpreting that in a way that Western minds can digest it, and then moving that across. And it's happened through Ayurveda as well, various, these various wisdom traditions. And that's, what's happened. A lot of these herbalists have found that they're, maybe they'll be looking at the Chinese medicine herbal system in how these mushrooms are used clinically. And then many of them, there was this explosion of awareness of Taoist tonic herbalism, especially kind of started emerging as Mao Zedong took over in the 50s. And went on that self-colonizing rampage of Chinese medicine to cut out the spirit and cut out that aspect of, magical shamanic roots, which is reality. Magic is literal reality. It doesn't need to be, this whiz bang thing. It's always grounded in some kind of, metaphoric explanation of what's real and what's going on. And then, decades later, they're like, well, maybe they were onto something. Modern science is showing how they knew the way. It's like, yeah, it's just this, it's just a skill you have to watch magic and know that magic isn't something that is just, completely void of explanation. It's just something which does explain, the magical transmutational, nature of energies and how things go through transitions consistently. And at some point, everyone will be like, oh, it's not magic in the sense that it was just like, wow, a wizard did it. It's like, it's big, that's what all, the blah, blah quantum physics is, doing at the moment anyway. But Mao Zedong doing that in the 50s, and you see that mass exodus from China, and then behind that, that red curtain, and that, goes to Taiwan, Hong Kong, the Taoists. And so with Westerners going there, you see a lot of Westerners getting access to those ancient lineages, and because it turned the I guess it was a pivotal time, because that's such an open source system. And yes, lineages were like, you need to earn to get onto the inside of this, of this lineage. And that still exists to an extent, but with such a disharmony moving towards what is now traditional Chinese medicine, where it's all about symptomology. Chinese medicine, Mao Zedong took it and went, and it's all about it being replicable. It's all about it being colonized. It's all about it being reduced to a sum of its parts and departments, so that it can be sold to the West, and so it can be, scaled in Western society. And so it was, if you you can go back into the, to the back end of medicine and the universal yin yang law, is it's such a disharmony that then the call for harmony to get returned comes, and where it was, all of a sudden the gates on lineages opened up a little bit, because it's like all hands on deck to restore the earth, the medicine that holds that. Yes, reductionism, I actually think it's just a natural part of what had to happen during this phase, that colonization. And in this conversation anyway, I'm definitely on the part of not for it, but I see it as, I just perhaps something, like an unfolding of something that needed to happen. And it happened just enough this time, rather than maybe so extremely that empires fell in the past. And so but it's been an all hands on deck. So the gates have opened a little bit on Taoism and these lineages, because it's such a desperate call to arms to bring harmony back from that extreme colonization of Chinese medicine, to restore the Taoist, magic, which is that which can be decentralized and is accessible to the layperson and the majority of people. It's simple. It's not huge university behind the gates. We're the ones that give you herbal medicine. They're our mushrooms, and how dare you? You're going to damage people if you give them that. And you need a qualification if you want to stick a needle in, in yourself. And it's like, fuck off. Acupuncture, Chinese medicine, this is medicine of the people when treating symptoms that fall into a lifestyle factor. And then it needs to be humble enough to be that home-based medicine and that home-based tonic herbalism, and that, that decentralized at-home simple, qigong flows. These are all things that are meant to be decentralized and in the home. And perhaps there are those that it's behind a gate of initiation, where it gets very extreme, where people can damage themselves if they're using these particular powerful herbs, really powerful forms, and those kinds of things. But that you don't need to do that. There's 95% of the practices are decentralized and are for the people, and are just there to maintain harmony. And maintaining harmony is very hard when you look at it from a university TCM perspective, when they make it so complicated. No one should, in their right mind, want to digest it, and they don't. They leave TCM University right now, and everyone has to go back and study the classics and come back to the essence of yin yang wuxing, because they know in their heart of hearts that they shouldn't just be treating a symptom, or they shouldn't be looking at a symptom and going beep beep boop. That means this is the point to acupuncture. Because if you're going to really be on the path, you need to be you're in a sensory way, which is a very real perception sensory way, while also very logically getting information. You need to be able to figure out where the tension point or where the linchpin point is, and in order to return harmony, allow the body to return to harmony, which has a continuousness, which requires a certain letting go of ego. You definitely need ego to go on, of course, on that path. But when we go into Taoism, it doesn't come down to the word ego. It comes down to another type of, like, whether we've got a functional expression of a spirit of particular organs, or whether it's not functionally expressing itself. And so maybe it's just excessive, and because it's a never-ending tending to the garden of the people who are in front of you, never-ending tending to your own garden of the way yin yang is transforming in you. And that's what yin yang wuxing is. And so when you go back to classical Taoism, classical Chinese medicine, it's like, yin yang isn't transforming correctly. Yin yang can be a little bit further felt and metaphorically connected with, but it's the most we're willing to go is through the 5 phases or 5 elements and 5 organ systems. And so it's just like, when you think about, you look at someone, they're presenting, and you're logically like, everything's presenting as, we're not going to go into it, but like their water, doing this, and like, and eventually you get out of your indoctrination of reductionism, and you're like, I can actually start feeling that. Well, but what if I don't get it exactly right? This is the whole point of lifestyle medicine, decentralized lifestyle medicine. You can't really fuck it up. Like, you can't really fuck someone up too bad with ginseng unless they're already having extreme symptomology or some basic qigong forms, or basically just trying to watch what the season's doing and align yourself with it and the way that you're cooking with it. It's so stupid and stupidly simple that's the call went out to have that kind of simple, decentralized, earth-based medicine that does come from shamanism, and does come from, it is a philosophy that just connects you to where you're at and your own capacity just to stay in harmony with your own, with your body, and regulate yourself so you stay out of the practitioner's office. So from there, that's where a lot of Westerners started getting exposed to this medicine. And then, of course, mushrooms are present all through Scandinavia. It's not like it's not there, but it was really through that mass exodus from China and the Taoists and those doing classical Chinese medicine really going, we need to share this before, because we're getting killed. They were literally getting killed, and they need to share it. And so it did start getting shared. The medicine, the lore, the stories around reishi mushroom. And so from there, naturally, Western scientific minds awesomely were like, cool, what's there about mushrooms now? And it's like, shit, there's heaps of studies on mushrooms going on through China as well, and using them with, in correlation with Fujung therapy in chemo and so on and so forth. And so they started doing it in the West, and then you see the avalanche occur, and then there's all these studies and that start coming out, and the herbalists start using mushrooms and going, gosh, maybe we can just start using them in our everyday life like the Taoists were doing. And you just put, like, it's not just mushrooms, you put astragalus in your stews, or and then eventually it goes on and on and on. And there's people, like Ron Teagarden, who find hermited Taoist masters who are primarily in the form of, like, tonic herbalism is what they're doing. There's so many others, like masters in, say, like a qigong, like, a lineage where qigong is like the focus. His is like, that lineage which gave emphasis to tonic herbalism. And then he comes over to America, and so him and then George Lamoureux, they come over and they bring over to the West and set up companies specializing in tonic herbalism. And it's not, it's not all classical formulas that are to be used in clinic. These are, tonic herb formulas, or their own formulas that are there to cultivate life. And it's a huge shift from Western herbal medicine, and because everything, once it gets centralized and institutionalized enough, the emphasis goes away using it every day. And so a lot of the Western herbal systems, except for the real, the little folky ones that pop up, they're obviously saying, yeah, use these herbs as much as you can every day. But Taoism like punched it, like every day and here's all the terminology. You're working, on your yin yang and your wuxing. So it's getting your water kidney system flowing so that it can transform between yin and yang. And what happens when that flows and you don't have imbalances there and the spirit of the kidneys are expressing itself, then you are protecting your Jing essence. And that's the term we give to your potential, your physical matter, your physical potential, that which can take you as foundation, like carry you as the foundation, the wax of the candle through life. You have a strong foundation. We use these herbs. It makes, especially working on the kidney water and the liver wood. And that's, it's easy to remember in the household. People are like, it can't be this simple. It's a scam. It's like, no, it's only a scam. I'll get to later when people take just the herbs and just a couple of terms and then just use that and market that without the full, the full awareness. Even if it's like, SuperFeast is impossible for me to educate constantly about the whole, everything that's behind the Taoist terminology, what we're doing in tonic herbalism, but I'll lead people back to the source constantly. Then where I got inspired. And so it's all, therefore it's connected. Therefore there's no glass ceiling on that. And then from there, we're like, right, so we can take these herbs. They are Jing herbs. There's a categorization. It's easy. A Jing herb, a Qi herb. So a Qi herb takes that potential in that body and animates it and metabolically brings us to life. And metabolically, can enhance and take us in one direction or the other direction. If we have enough Qi, we don't have to pull from our bone marrow and our kidneys in order to get through the day. We've got enough that we age gracefully. We're not pulling excessively from reserves. It's like, oh, good, this terminology is easy, and move the emotions, thoughts. That's the Qi. Cool, that's the Qi. Qi tonics help with that. Okay, cool. Then, Shen is there as, that mind, that infinite aspect of ourselves, our personality, and we refine that. So we're interesting people and we're not assholes to the best extent when we get older. And that's why we take the herbs. And, it takes, so that's where that, with all of that behind it, there was enough of a philosophy in order to connect with these mushrooms that especially were coming from that. And as the Western studies started showing what these mushrooms were doing, from remember 86 was when that first book was there and it had a huge amount of studies in it already. It was just a matter of time because, people, they're finding from then, they're finding that there's like not just a nostalgic awakening, there's like a real aspect of these mushrooms which are very uniquely hitting your receptor sites and then like nothing else getting into deeper receptors within your organ systems and helping to turn the lights on of your immune system. And so there is that feeling of like, oh, this is right. And so they spread themselves because they are so effective. And it took that long. By the time I started SuperFeast 11 years ago, and it was 13 or 14 years ago when I was first getting into mushrooms myself, the transformation happens so quick that it's in your immune system that it can meet you where you're at and like, want to solve this problem. If I, if I tell people like metabolism and Qi herbs, they're like, great, if I take Mason's Qi blend, that's going to fix my metabolism. It's like, right. Yeah, cool. Let's stay. We meet you there. And that's why we recommend, cool, here's like all these other really easy lifestyle practices that you can bring in as well. We all live in that world. And then eventually you with the mushrooms, especially, they work so hard, so fast, the placebo comes in and you're like, yes, it's working. I'm fixing myself and I'm saving myself. And then it gets to the point where they'll carry you to the point where it's like, okay, cool. Now you don't need me anymore. Your immune system is in that particular place. And you can see now we can very calmly connect with a long-term intention that we have for you and your body. And then it becomes a practice and it becomes a consistent practice. And that's the wall that people need to get over in terms of tonic herbalism. And that's the most transformational time of tonic herbalism, when you can have both. I'm going to use this because I've got such an extreme tension or symptom or need, and I'm going to use it there. And then flesh out the other aspect, which is I've got a long-term intention. This is, I know that this is a practice, small amount with consistency, same as movement. So a bit of breath, a bit of mindfulness, a bit of like, watching your anger and making sure over the next 10 years that anger transforms into creativity. It's just like, that's when you get that. That's where the mushrooms have landed, and I think because of tonic herbalism, it's the Taoist tonic herbalism, the mushrooms have taken on that ability for people to get their head around taking something that's a medicine every single day for the rest of your life without it having to have clinical implications. And the boom was like really I guess it was like 6 years ago when it just like exploded. When I started 11 years ago, I thought there was no room in the market for doing mushrooms,
right?
Because it was just a couple of my mentors in the States who were already kind of doing it. And I was just finding how I like to source them, and I was finding some bulk suppliers. Back then, for whatever reason, I was trying the organic ones and trying the wood-grown ones and the grain-grown ones, and eventually landed in the Chinese Dao, which is that sourcing philosophy we still use, based on an old classical text, 2,000 years old. And then, as I was doing the markets in northern beaches of Sydney, it was like people just kept on coming to me with genuine things that were, they were like, it's just like, oh my God, my children get sick and it affects me so much because we're out for this many weeks, and people coming to me with like pretty hectic disease states, and I'm just like, I can't really. Like the things I had, like the superfoody things I had, I'm like, and I don't have things I could ever treat you, but you're so desperate to take responsibility for yourself and your lifestyle. And I was like, and I got that, and I was like, it took me a while to really, just to not how to talk and go, I'm not going to talk to the fact that you want to heal from your, this, what you've been diagnosed as. I have got nothing that can like be a random healer, but I can get that you don't want to muck around in terms of the way you're dialing in your diet, your herbal practice, and your lifestyle. It's going to give you the best opportunity. And the best opportunity I had to contribute to that was mushrooms at the time. So I was like, okay, I'll see if I can get them into the country. And then it just kind of started. And then I saw it mushroom, like, from there, people would just share it. And that's where it came from. And then 5-6 years ago, it just like, the consciousness just went poof, and it was insane. And then, from there, big bopper businesses have jumped on board, and then they've got the word out, and that trickles down to little, little guys like now probably a medium guy like us in SuperFeast, and helps us out because we just, still own 100% of the company. We still stick in our lane with putting our face out there and educating about the traditions that the herbs come from, so people have the best chance to get the most out of the herbs. And then so that's just like that's how it's kind of happened. And it's going to happen again soon, because there's some huge companies getting in with like insane marketing budgets, like they're getting into the mushroom market now. So it's just, it's all good. I mean, where does it go from here? I mean, integrated into the medical system. I know, I know it'll all go through the greedy poor way, but that's fine. It's already in the medical systems in Japan and China and Russia, but that's where it'll go. It'll start really, what's the word? Like diluted. But it doesn't matter. Like the mushrooms will get in that way. That won't be my style. I'll just still stay our little small batch farm, independent farm sourcing. And then they're just going to take over because they just work too well. That's where it came from.
I love the analogy around how mushrooms grow in the wild and then how you see them growing and proliferating in the market. It's very much the same.
Yeah.
They just kind of get in everywhere and find some food, and then they'll grow. And
it's been, they transform consciousness pretty well, and you can see the consciousness of the mushroom market and the market people. You can see, I've been able to watch my own, consciousness evolve, and I've been able to watch to see it spit people out,
right.
And, challenge people. But all in all, the industry, I don't know, you can see the quality of the mushroom, like affecting the industry. Like you can commodify it to a certain extent. And then if you're working with the essence of it, it's too powerful. If you're taking it, it's too powerful. It'll take, a few, I'm not expecting like a miracle transformation, but over 100 years, them being present in the circulation on en masse, it'll be a pretty significant contributor to the transformation of the way we're able to approach life, because they take so much stress off the body. It's insane, and maybe that means it's taking stress off my body so I can like
someone else
chase stress in other ways, like I've been I'm endeavoring to grow my company in a very unique way and capture a unique, business systems that I feel aligned with, what the essence of this is. And, the Tao system has, put its hand up in terms of like a match for what our intention and mission is here. And I get to put a shitload of effort into that, because rather than just go and do a cookie cutter, hierarchy system, which I like as well for certain businesses, but I get to, I get more extra space to go and flog myself for this endeavor.
How do you kind of deal with, you talk a lot about the Eastern way that it came through and then permeating the Western world. How do you kind of deal with the fact, like, some people are still going to be like, oh, great, this is good for my gut health, so I'm just going to buy that, and like, how do you try and get the true transmission of what you're doing through with what you sell?
I don't. I mean, some people, it's probably like an 80-20, in terms of the top of the iceberg. If some people can't be bothered, and then some companies are just like, that's all they do, and that's sweet. And so they serve those people like greatly. And then a lot of people find Mason's mushrooms, for example, and they're like, this is really good for gut health, right? And I'm like, yeah, because it was on a poster, or maybe it's put there, it's accessible information. And the people who, say like me, when I was originally looking for these herbs, like, I don't give a shit about that. So that even if the information's there, I just bypass it. So I don't know, I just put out lots of different information out there. Sometimes I feel like I've gone too far, but there's always a 20% allowance to meet people where they're at, so they can decide whether we're the company for them, so that's, I'll do whatever to a certain extent, if it's useful for the people who actually will be hell yeses for working with SuperFeast. And then there's just some things that I'm just like, nah, I'm not even going to bother, with that, because there's like so many other companies that can help them out with that, or systems that, who are willing to use that language, but that's not our language. So yeah, you got to be multidimensional. It's nice being multidimensional. And I can, my branding goes into the five elements a lot of the time. So sometimes, sometimes it's, purely, there's this aesthetic and a shininess and a beauty and a perception of value, which is highly the metal, and that's taken, 2 years of integrating that. And other times I want to be able to fiery, make people clear, very, it's very yang and avert in your face. This is, this is what it's going to give to you. Take it. Is it a match? Come on. Or here's the sale. And then other times it's going to be that liverhood, which is very, hey, here's the plan of how you're going to use this. And this is how you're going to align with the 24-hour organ wheel so that you get the most out of you. And then we're going to get to here, because the vision is that you're going to be 80 and you're going to have a nice, strong body. Can you feel that? And then, so on and so forth. Yeah. So there's many ways, but there's only so much that SuperFeast can, how far SuperFeast can go in those different elements as well, before one of the other elements is going to be deficient, and then we've got to bring it back.
I like applying that framework to how you guys do business. What's your take on the idea of, we evolved a lot when we started eating medicinal mushrooms? I've heard that a lot. I'm curious to hear your take on it.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, it's probably one of the multiple things that happen. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of those, it's like a fun thing to think about and talk about, and we don't know. We know that there was this huge jump, and we know there's all this mystery around the way, how and where we evolved, and there's gaps in, in the tracking of the skeletal, structure, where we're like, oh, what happened, and so there's that mushrooms, where did that mushroom all of a sudden, come from, or were there other factors in there? There's like lots of cool things. So yeah, I mean, sitting in that space of opening up to that possibility where there's smoke, there's fire, but it's probably multiple, it is multiple factors. And yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, the psilocybin stoned ape thing, I just think it's worth, I think it's worth sitting in that space, because it's more likely the theory, if you're just able to handle it and then hold the space and not put you into a state of opposition against the people who are classical evolutionists, Likewise, not put yourself into opposition with the people who think that it was, intervention from the stars that helped us like quickly go, like just hold the multiple spaces. Cause it's like, it's the difference between looking at the shiny things in the sky rather than, allowing the shiny things in the sky, the stars, to give you context of all the space between it. It's a very different feeling. And so, yeah, as long as it doesn't take you into just the shiny thing, yeah, that's going to help me, improve, and screw those people that are like university, evolution people.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of missing the point a bit going down that path.
Yeah, I think so. Take more mushrooms.
Let's talk about some of the physiology. So what's actually happening when we start to take some of these mushrooms in the body? I mean, like we've just spoken about, there's so many health benefits, if you will. But how is this actually happening in the body?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've really drilled down. Like, I'm up to date on what's going on, but in terms of like educating about like the chemical pathways that have been altered.
I'm not a biologist, so you don't have to go too technical.
No, but I like grounding in there. So I mean, generally the way the compounds work is there's going to be like a kind of like the terpene kind of side of things, and there's many other substances. Like there's always going to be like an active ingredient that is the adaptogenic enabler of the formula, which can work in many different ways. Often is quite mysterious in the pathways that it takes in the body. And then there is the other side of things is very generalized, which is going to be like in the mushrooms, the beta glucans, which are the immunological side of things. The immunological side of things is what I actually think is the major thing that creates adaptability within the body, because when you get so sophisticated in your immune system, because these sugars that are in there are so high density that they bypass digestive juices. And then when they hit immune cells in the gut associated lymph tissue, it's kind of like a mystery shopper kind of thing where the macrophage is like, oh, is this something trying to hurt us? Is this just like, I'm just going to take it away and destroy it either way. And then in the process of destroying it and releasing it, what's left is perfectly shaped for receptors within our, innate deeper immunity, which is hard to get to. And then that turns on other immunological capacity, it doesn't stimulate it. And so that's happening. And then at that point, you get more integration with your immune system in terms of what's an appropriate way to respond to invasion or a false invasion, so on and so forth.
Right.
And then from there, you just see such spaciousness in terms of, way that trickles down. And you can't even really find how and why mushrooms have such, since I've looked and done quite a lot of podcasts with it, with people who are like going through the studies and I kind of don't care personally, but like in the sense of how it's working on the hormones, because it's such a good hormonal regulator that, and it's interesting, like I'm pretty sure you ask like most naturopaths why you put them on mushrooms for hormone regulation, just like, I just know it just does a job. And it does. And so that's just it's kind of like a chicken and the egg thing, going like it's the adaptogenic side of things and this, this active ingredient, and also how those active ingredients, this is something I don't like about active ingredients. And so whether it's the active adaptogenic ingredients, like a ginsenoside, or whether it's a beta glucan in a mushroom, because it's like the level of reductionism is, it's good if you need a scientific study. That's the only way that a hospital is going to use that turkey tail, as if it's standardized to 30% of this and 10% of that, and it's replicable from that study. Like that's, I get it, I'm not against it, but it completely, that adopting that for long-term use really just takes away the fact that, for thousands of years, this is, and okay, I'll just quickly speak to people like, oh yeah, but we can improve that. We know things that they didn't know for the last thousands of years. But the thing is, it's a certain level of reverence that you can get to. There's only a certain level of reverence you can get to with herbs, and from a system that has tens and hundreds of thousands of herbs, and there's like only 50 or so tonic herbs, and they did have alchemical ways of extracting certain herbs that they didn't know what they were doing, but they knew they were getting they were pulling out more of this kind of heavy compound rather than this light compound. And the Taoists landed on not doing that because there are all these, what would now be known as unidentified compounds that you don't know to what extent they're regulating the beta glucans. There's a completely invisible, non-identified oil in there that, and that's something that happened within the way that they would extract. They'd make sure there's a chamber to capture the oils and add the oils back in there. That's something that we follow as well, just because it's been done for thousands of years, because you just can't fuck around a lot of the time when people are taking these long term. So this is the way it was identified for thousands of years has been. So go into clinic, very different. I don't care. It's not my terrain. But in terms of like decentralized in the home, convalescence after a heavy illness period, getting the body strong for like a surgery or something going on, like getting your grandma onto it because she's approaching 70 and you really want her to to really integrate what these are going on, because you don't want to see her like slip into cognitive decline. They're big intentions, and you want to sit back where the biggest current of chi is, which is in thousands of years of like, we can do that reductionist thing, but we're going to try and extract as much as we possibly can. And then some people can take it a little bit further with herbal spagyrics. I like that. It's not necessary for what the kind of wide impact I'm having during this time, and not something that was done overly in the West, in the East. That's again a reductionist thing, but I'm talking to the one person who maybe is got that larger awareness of herbalism, so it might be unnecessary to talk about. But that's the nicest thing about what I do, is I'm just and I just get to like sit back into that, it's that safe zone, that proven zone. So, but that's what they're kind of, that's one aspect of what it's doing. And then, to be honest, it's so mind-boggling that, in terms of what's happening. And I think the Western studies, they're doing a certain job, but I think we're going to get 50 years down the track, and they're going to look at these studies in terms of them being able to explain what Shazandra does, and they're going to be like, far out, we were naive to ever think we could explain this through chemical pathways. I honestly think, and so that's why I think this this egoic chortling of the Western systems, like, oh, you little Taoist magic believing, to liver wood. Oh, wood in the body, a little story, a little fairy tale, in the body. And
what's this metal?
And that's like, oh, the metal regulating can you imagine the lung regulating the liver? And I think we're going to get to the point where they're like the multiple, maybe through multiple reductionist study, which will probably end up being really cool, because it always is going to be cool and with reason. We'll be like, holy shit, the way this whole thing is interacting, and this thing that we thought was isolated is actually so integrated with that other chemical pathway that they are actually in symphony, and we can bring them in, harmony. Yes, we can see the beat of harmony now. And oh my gosh, that is something that has that quality of metal and sharpness, and it does bring value. I can feel that, there's a chemical value accumulation in the body through that, and we can now start tracking that kind of molecule it is that kind of emotion of grief, that's there with it, and that, oh my god, that is the thing that goes in and like mentors those chemicals and cells within the liver system, and that's the wood, because it's gonna open up like that. And I don't have a scientific mind necessarily, but I do in the purest sense of a scientific mind, where I'm scrutinizing constantly, never ending. And for me, my safe spot in terms of is that, well, my comfortable, not that comfortable is not like I guess this in terms of comfort, in terms of have impact, and what I'm just trying to do through SuperFeast, which is to dramatically lower unnecessary degenerative disease through consistent practices so that people can cultivate wisdom. And at the moment, that just sits within Tonic herbalism, and Taoism is just like, we're a really good match for you like right now. And it continues to double down into that phase because it's the most open source, wanting to be spread. Here's the information hard. There's so many people into it now in a micro community, but with integrity, that it's hard to take it off course anymore. And, and so that's where I'm at with it. And so and I'm studying, these 5 organ systems, and then it is a map and terminology, then I can let go of it, and I can just feel what it's left me with in terms of perception of my body. That's just where I like sitting at the moment, and it feels really nice because that's in terms of I take our mission, or with I take it very seriously, and people come to me because they're very serious about it. So the safest thing I can do to know that I'm delivering to the best of my ability is keep the conversation within that simple yin yang wuxing conversation, because that is going to be the thing that cultivates the most body perception, because for me, and what I can offer right now, it's the closest thing that, or metaphor, a story that enough people are engaging in, that it can get people close to reality of what they need to perceive is possible, what their body is, and what their destiny is, so that they can have really big impacts. Right. So mushrooms are fully entangled in that, the protectors, the great protectors. That's what and I'm like, awesome. I don't need to go much further than that at this point. Immune system, great protectors, get on them, consistent practice, funky new ways to remind people, that's, of how to maintain your consistent usage of these. And
and I love it. I love it. It's so good. And I totally resonate with that, in the sense it's the same when people come to us talking about sauna. They're like, Alex, tell me the exact temperature and time I need to be in there to activate heat shock proteins and this. And it's like, well, yeah, like we can go there, but at the end of the day, like just get really hot, right? Put yourself in that space. And say other homedic stresses are the same, like get cold. Don't worry about whether it's 4 degrees or 8 degrees. Just get in the fucking cold water for a bit and it'll be good for you. It's going to help. Yeah, we can talk about all the things, all the specific, elements and molecules that are changing and shifting and more, whatever, but just get hot and get cold and your body will thank you for it.
So good. I mean, that's the thing I was talking about it the other day, and I talk about it with with other people who are in the Taoist arts who have been studying it way longer than me. And I'm like, it's like, I remember when I was in my 20s and people would bring up yin yang and then the 5 elements, I'd get annoyed at its simplicity.
Right.
Be like, fuck that, and it's not on the edge enough, and it's like it must be too simple, and and then the more and more like a Yost, who's up there in your area, Yost Sawyer, I talked to him on the first time he was on the podcast, and he was just like, I'm just tuning in with yin yang, which is what everyone in this universe, I think, is doing. I think it's the purpose of this universe, is to learn the essence of, of light and dark, and that contrast, which is very unique. And what you just said in hot cold, I'm like, yeah, I was talking to someone, you can talk about it, like in terms of, you can think about yin and yang and the harmonization between yin and yang, and take away your perception of what those terms mean. And then from that point, you go to the Tao, and the Tao, of course, you can't define it because it's ever still and ever moving. And, but if you go one more than yin yang, and you just say, you can just start feeling, where it's that, I don't know if it's, it's that 0 point. I don't know how you feel it, but, in terms of going between hot and cold, eventually a very advanced practice. And you don't have to use this terminology of the Tao. There's many other ways you can. You don't have to concentrate on the split. You don't have to concentrate on the 2. You can come back to the 1 and go, is that in alignment with the Tao, what you're doing right now? And that went with enough practice. And this is the whole point in meditative practice, as far as I'm concerned. It's just very difficult on a deep constitution of your life kind of fucking way, is to be like, is it in harmony? Is it in harmony? Is that, is that flowing with the Tao? And there's no right or wrong answer, because you can't explain it. That's the whole fucking point of them saying the Tao you can name is not the Tao. But just so you don't, if you slide between that, you can be like in that phase of like, hit yourself with that question of, are you aligned in your 1 or that space, and then you can take it down to yin and yang. And then you can talk about it. If that's too, if that's not enough, you can take it down to Jing, Qi, and Shen. You can be like, cool. So is my physical potential really saying cultivated? And is that in alignment with that Qi, my metabolism? So with the cold part, for people who can't warm themselves up, you can see you've burned through that Qi, and you'll be like, do you think this is really affecting your ability when you're 90 to be, happy and exuberant? And so then there's the 3, and then you can go to the 10,000 things from there, if you really want to go into the like minutiae of like heat shock, blah, blah, blah. But that can generally be met of like, what are you wanting to do here? Are you wanting to live a long time? Well, that's Jing. Okay, so let's come back to your bone marrow, and this is consistent practice. You're not going to you're not going to suddenly increase your superannuation in your body through going and doing these, these practices and getting the science right. It's just never going to work that way. It's fun as long as you're not got everything, potentiation though of those kinds of things. That extreme potentiation needs to get a leg up from a dramatically tuned in lifestyle that is consistent. And that's the thing that fucking got me eventually. I was like, dude, I'm really looking for the Hail Mary here with all these supplements, or maybe it's this sequence, and it's like, and that's where, for me, again, it's hard for me and it's easy for a lot of other people. I find it really hard, it's just like, that's why I like the Taoist map of 24-hour organ wheel that shows you these are the phases, and it's like, cool. And then I can get rid of the map because it's just a map and feel like, yeah, that is actually the flow. My God, that's and to a lesser extent for me, that the rhythm of seasons between the moons, a high amount for women. Then the bedrock is there. Then you can't shut up the fucking emotions you need to feel because the chi's stuck in that organ. And then you're like, yeah, that it probably doesn't matter that I get that heat shock protein perfect.
Exactly.
But then when it becomes fun and it's like want rather than a desperate need, or like fingers crossed this is going to fucking make, the amount of people that are fingers crossed on their wellness adventure, and then you see 20 years later that it actually hasn't worked, and it's devastating because they've become dogmatic. They're looking for Hail Marys, and it's cool to feel like you're in the right camp. And it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. Anything that's been spoken about in the wellness community now is just going to get shat on. And nothing is for certain, not one thing. And so when you feel like, great, if you're outside of your center and you're out in that domain of, health, which you need to cultivate, but from a centered place, if you find yourself out there and you camp out there and you're like, great, I'm right, I found it, which gets talked about ad nauseum, but it's a consistent practice that everyone needs to have, especially if they don't want to leak jing and they want to be an interesting person, not boring as batshit, is come with a sustainable model for recognizing when you're outside of your own, center, release, move through that identity. A lot of it is when you're going into a phase of wellness or philosophy, know what your exit's going to be, plan your exit before you go into a phase, especially if you start recognizing that, oh my God, yes, I have to do it with business. Oh my God, these guys are like, they've got the model, and I've got my two coach, my community that with coaching, with one, and then I've got my person who understands my business and who's on my fake board. But, every time I'm like, oh my God, yeah, this is, with that goes like, oh my God, this is going to be life-changing. I plan my exit of integration of what it's going to be like when I come back out of that phase and come back into my own center, and then I integrate it. And I'm not of that realm, that philosophy forever. Yeah, it's fucking it's hard.
That's a lot of work.
If you're engaged with life, you gotta do it. If you're really engaged, and it's like, I think there's going to be a time I'm going to be disengaged. I'm just going to spend some time in myself, but I'm not at that phase of life right now. I'm taking myself out and building some shit. So I need to be, and I'm a dive into the deep end kind of person. But maybe other people here aren't dive into the deep end, and they're, and it's something that I need is more timidity in a nice way. It's a nice feature of the spleen, being a little bit timid. It's got an in the vortex, nice way of expressing itself. And perhaps for them, you guys, it's like you're planning your exit too much. You need to just fucking jump into the void and just,
forget about the exit for now. Just go and do something.
Yeah. Just there's an exit. You're not going to forget. I know you're the kind of person that will never forget that there's an exit. And it's kind of like, I don't know if you watched. Are you a Simpsons man?
It's been a while.
When Homer's trying to find a new bar, and he's like, he goes to I think he goes to YY or something like that, and he's like, wait a minute, there's something wrong here. This lesbian bar has no exit. Enjoy your death trap, ladies. It's like the Homer. There are people like Homer that will be in a very, very unusual environment and be like, there's no exit. Like, yeah, I'm not one of those people.
You've got it well planned. When you talk about harmony, what does harmony mean to you?
I mean, if you kind of go into the conversation of the Tao and I ask you, if I ask you at the moment within your life, are you flowing with the Tao? Can you feel anywhere near what I'm talking about in sense of what I mean by the Tao? By maybe the sweet spot, by like a spot, there's an appropriate amount of like, you can see there's an expression of like, there's an appropriate amount of exploration and safety, and everything is, because fucking the universe is fucking on as far as I can tell, like we're doing a lot. And so there's as much as we can do to find these little sweet spots. I mean, I'm right now, if someone asked me, I'd say like, I can recognize these, I've had a wave of embarrassment, because I like yesterday, I could kind of like, I'm doing things I know I need to do, but then I get through that phase. And then I look back and I'm like, oh, like I'm kind of embarrassed at the way that I had to act, but I needed to get that outcome. Like, it's a fucking complicated thing, but nonetheless, like you're always like, when you're walking, you're falling into balance constantly. You're never actually balanced. And so it's a matter of skill set and engagement, because you can be that sometimes I'm the most out of harmony, but I know that I'm doing the things that I need to, and going through my harrowing integration process through whatever it is at the time, I've left my mass plant medicine days, and I'm just like sitting down every week with a grounded Jungian psychologist and just making sense, and I'm doing it. And even though it looks like sometimes I'm falling off an edge, I know I'm doing what I need to move towards, like, I have no fucking idea what it is, but I can feel it. What's, like, say, to use the word, my destiny. And I know that's maybe, is it predetermined, or is it completely, being created by my sovereign self, where there's no it's complete free will? It's probably fucking somewhere in the middle. That's the two, the yin and yang, and then the Tao in the middle. And so it's just, you can get a relationship. So it's a relationship, I guess. I don't know if it's with ourselves, or, with what the Taoists say, that we're the bridge between heaven and earth. So the bridge between infinite love and infinite love, wanting to sing and see what there is and what we can do, and the earth being a fucking manifestation master of substance, and our, us moving within it. So like harmony, who knows? People, that's like, some people are musicians and they're in harmony, and that's like, they're classically trained to be in harmony and people love it. And then other people who they've never learned classical structure, what's that Daft Punk? My name is Giovanni Giorgio. People call
everybody
me
calls me Giorgio.
Yeah, and so anyway, like he's like, I got no, I had no idea of like, rhythm or ruin. So he just, once you embrace, do the click. But he was, he talks about the fact, that he's like, there were no rules attached to the way that he played. And so he was able to go and find his own rhythm and harmony. And so there's no fucking rules to it. It's a relationship. And that's, and you learn about it, because the harmony of yin yang and harmony of wuxing as qi transforms, it's just such a good way to engage with the best thing that's going to teach you about harmony, which is your body. And somatically, and then that's why the masters are so fucking cheeky, because they're like, tell us what the fucking thing is, and they're like,
talking around it.
I've been doing this for 50 years, and that's, I know that you're at this phase of your development and this phase of your integration of the process, which you'll do uniquely, but has a pattern. And once you get there, you'll further fall towards your personal understanding of what harmony is for you. And then that's, mastery is a certain extent of just being able to flow through those elements. And that, that's why they're always, they're always shamanic, because there's like different dimensions of personality and being within us. And that's a part of it. Yeah. And at what point do you stop exploring and embody? That's all the, it's all the yin and yang, go through your phases.
I've got nothing to say to that, mate. Very well said. Mason, it's been an hour. Is there anything else that you want to squeeze into this conversation for everyone listening whilst you've got their attention?
I think so. We went out there. I mean, remember, when it comes to the tonic herbs are classified very simply. They're going to be classified based on the organ system in which they dance through and support the harmonization of chi flow through. And so, and then in consequence of that, which treasure it's helping to protect. And So, very simply, the Jing, when you're exhausted or when you're feeling you're not regenerating and you're kind of worried about that physical potential, that's your Jing. And so the Jing herbs, which are, working primarily on the kidneys and liver, maybe a little bit of spleen, eucommia barks as a Jing formula, that's where you can enter. And then the Qi herbs are those which are, really metabolically driven. So when it's like there's fatigue, your body's there, but you just don't have, the energy to animate yourself constantly.
Yeah.
And that's transitional energy. So and this is where I'm at probably more than anything, my body's good, probably thanks to all the practice I did in my 20s, because I'm not practicing as much now because my practice is the business and family and like new baby and 5-year-old. But you don't have the ability to transition from the yang of the day to the yin of the day. That's Qi. You're fatigued, and so you can't make that shift into the night, so that's the Qi for herb formulas, the spleen and lung herbs, and sometimes their liver as well. And then likewise, mind, if your mind's not moving, your personality's not developing, if you're not able to get to that, virtuous feeling of like love and gratitude, and you can't get your mind still, that's Shen. And so those herbs are generally going to be working on heart, a little bit of liver, a little bit of spleen a lot of the time, a little bit of lung some of the time, but that's the Shen herbs, and that's the Shen blend. So yeah, that's just a little guide. And then the mushrooms generally Qi, a lot of times the Jing and Shen as well. Like it's like a lot of herbs are going to cover all of them. But yeah, the mushrooms are the ones if you just like, yeah, cool, I just want like crazy immunity. Yeah, just like take the, there's lots of mushrooms out there from SuperFeast. There's capsules, mushroom mate. There's a formula, Mason's mushrooms. Probably the easiest place for you just to get in there and just stay consistent with your practice. Yeah.
Nice, man. If people want to find out or get in touch with SuperFeast, want to buy some of your stuff, where do they go?
Yeah, superfeast.com.au. There's heaps of info on there. It's a podcast. It's got lots of weird ramblings. The Instagram's really informative as well, just at SuperFeast. And yeah, and then you can, our customer service is on, so you can call us or send us an email or send us an Instagram DM. If you can't find, there's a where to start and all that kind of stuff on the website. But any question you have, we're the ones that are going to help you to find your sweet spot in finding and, walking along your herbal, your tonic herbal practice. So, yeah.
Nice, man. And if you could point someone in the direction of where to learn more about the Tao and the yin and the yang and what we've been talking about, where would be a good place to start?
There's, John Blofled is probably a good place to start. There's that opens up a whole, there's a lot there. There's also, sorry, my name amnesia is kicking in. The Tao of Love, Sex and Longevity by Daniel Reed is probably a really good one as well. That was probably my first Taoist text that I ever had. I've had him on the podcast twice. He's pretty classical. John Blofeld is the other guy that originally was bringing it over. But yeah, and then Tonic Herbalism, Ron Teagarden's book, The Ancient Wisdom of the Chinese Tonic Herbs, big yellow book, and that's got a lot on yin yang, 5 elements, and then the treasures and how it relates to the herbs.
Amazing. Thank you, mate. It's been a pleasure having you on.
Thanks, bro. Sweat on.